He went in as a boy, came out as a man. Hello and welcome to the all-new ThyGap podcast on your Thursday. This is me being Brute, and with me is...
Bogus Noog.
Bogus, welcome.
Brute, what's up? What's up with you?
But Bogus, enough of the chit-chat. I'm not here to chit-chat with you. I'm here on a mission to make people follow ThyGap on Instagram.
At _ ThyGap.
And they can also follow ThyGap on Twitter.
At ThyGap.
And they can write to ThyGap.
The email is mindthygap@gmail.com.
And that's about the list. That's
about
my
it.
mission.
Yes.
The mission to Mars.
There's one more. There's another small update to add there, Brute. For our listeners, our dear listeners, to just remind you all that podcast platforms have started adding new features like ratings, like comments, etc.
Yes.
So Spotify, for example, did not have a rating feature, but they just recently added it. So if you like this podcast, if you're a regular listener, go to your podcast platform, give us a rating of your choice and add a comment. That helps us a lot.
Yes, and that is to our dearest listeners.
Only the dearest ones.
Not the dearer.
Yeah.
The dearest listeners.
Yep.
But anyways, Bogus, we are here to talk about today's topic of our favorite, famous, world-class, state-of-the-art template. It's not easy.
Oh, yeah. Well, It's Not Easy is a series.
Yeah.
Special series by ThyGap.
It's a state-of-the-art series.
Yes.
That's a term that we've learned recently.
Creme de la creme.
It's more like a bakery, a bakery tagline.
Yes.
But it's not easy growing up. That's our topic today.
Yep, that's our topic. And as our template goes, we will first of all define what we mean by growing up.
Yes, so that we are all on the same page.
Exact context that we're talking about. So, Brute, do the honors, please.
Growing up. It's a very common phrase. Often, even today, my family keeps telling that to me. Like, grow up, Brute. How many more years do you need?
Yeah.
And then you don't get that a lot because you are about 80 when you were born.
A lot of middle-aged men also, talk to their bodies. Grow up, man.
Grow up, please. Little more.
Please.
Little extra.
Just for 2 minutes.
That's all I need you for.
Yeah.
That's all I need you for. But growing up, okay, to set the context, Bogus,
yes.
what we mean by ThyGap when we say growing up is the different phases of life. When you're passing through the different phases of life, you need different personalities. You need to develop different qualities. You need to develop certain skills to tackle different phases of life. Like when you're a boy or a girl, it's different. Your requirements to perform at your best are different versus when you're a teenager, versus when you're an adolescent, versus when you have completely blossomed into the adulthood.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, bro, you're focusing on that particular stage where, someone just finishes their education.
Schooling,
and they're about to step into, working a job, earning by themselves.
Yeah, so we are talking about the toughest phases, because I think a lot changes in this phase. And, we ourselves, because we are young at heart.
Oh, yeah.
We can only comment on a phase which is the transition from a teenage adolescent person to a proper adult.
Right.
Where, you're literally by yourselves. Right? So that is the phase that we're talking about. We don't know what happens beyond that. So you have to wait for a long time for the part 2 of this.
Yep.
Probably about like 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Give or take.
And it's also not just about us being in that phase or us bypassing that phase, but it is also about we seeing a lot of difference immediately versus, the generational gap, you can say. So we are at a great place to do the comparison, the comparative analysis, and say okay, these are facts. These are not something which are told to us just to motivate us or scare us per se, but these are hard core facts.
Right. And with that context,
do you have a different this thing, or you're aligned with this?
I'm aligned with that.
Perfect.
So with that context very properly established, we'll move on to the next part of our It's Not Easy series, which is, why is this not easy?
Why is growing up not easy?
Yeah.
$1 million question.
That's the only kind of questions we ask.
Yeah, it at least starts at 7 digits.
Yeah.
So, Bogus, I'll throw the ball in your court now. You can get the ball rolling.
I actually got the ball rolling by asking the questions. So.
Yes, and I've been a typical politician by throwing the ball back at you.
No. I ask the question, then you answer. If I ask the question and answer, people will stop subscribing. It looks mad. You know?
Okay. So we'll cut this part and then I'll jump in. One of the first reasons why I feel it's not easy is because growing up, the literal sense of growing up, which is like, how they say like he went in a boy and came out a man.
Yeah.
That happens very fast. You don't know when it happens. You don't know how it happens. There is always this compelling event that will make it happen.
Right.
That will force you to like grow up at a very short span. And there are so many cliches that I think we might be taking in the course of this episode. They say that you really don't ever become a man till your father passes on, like your father passes away. And that is a compelling event, right? Like you are never prepared for not having one of your parent.
Yeah.
So that is why growing up is never easy. It's the fact that you're a teenager or an adolescent and suddenly you're all hunky-dory, your life is cool, you're just looking forward for the future, and suddenly you get into this job and 3 months into the job you start hating it. Like, oh, this is what I was waiting for all these years, like this is nonsense. So those realizations hit you very hard. And another reason why we picked this particular phase is a lot of reality checks happen. When you're 20, 21, 22, you are at that delusional phase of I'm the best ever.
You're a little bit more on the idealistic side.
Yeah, you're the
as
whole
far as your goals are concerned.
Yeah.
Everything is heavy with idealism and is just waiting for that bubble to be pricked.
You can say you're like at the top of the bell curve of optimism and confidence and all that.
Yeah. You think you can pull off a job and 3 other passion projects and then follow a different hobby. You think you can do it all. Like 24 hours is a lot of time as it looks.
Time is a luxury that will never be over for me.
Yeah. And of course, you also think, I'll always be this young.
I mean, we'll go into the deeper aspects of why it's not easy. I think it's all going to be why it's not easy. But to elaborate this point, like when you move out of college, when you move out of that 100 people bubble and then go into an institute or an organization of thousands of people who are still in and around your age, but you are now directly interacting with a little more experienced people and little more seniors, then you start realizing how dumb you are. And it is kind of, I think it happens to the smartest of the smart people. And it's even worse, I feel, for someone who's topping their class and who's like the teacher's pet. Or like the symbol of idealism.
That hits real hard.
Hard, right? Because the guy who's not doing so well in school is almost going with an anticipation that I'll not do really great in my job.
No baggage at all.
No baggage at all.
Yeah.
Having said that, you can't escape the superlatives that you keep attaching yourself. Like, I'm the best at this, I'm the best at that, like I can do this so much better than so many other people, etc. And then suddenly, boom, oh shit, there's truckloads of people who are way better than me with much lesser effort.
That's the problem, right? Part of why it's not easy is it's a constant procession of eating humble pie, like constantly. And calling it a pie is just being cute because it's actually just dirt that you're eating. It's
the worst pie ever.
It's dirt cakes that you're being made to eat. Like someone's holding your head down into the dirt and you're supposed to eat it. Because I mean, for us, when we grow up, if you're growing up in a conventional family setup, they kind of pamper you and you grow up believing you're the shiz, you're a unique snowflake. There's something very different and very special about you that no other kid has, but it's just you.
You're the only piece ever made.
You're so clever, you're so tall, all the kinds of things that
you got the best clothes.
You're funny, you're intelligent, you're smart. All of this goes out the window when you go to a college, especially if it's a reputed kind of organization or a college,
right,
which attracts talent. Then you immediately find yourself being baselined to the average, like you're in the class medium if you're lucky. If you're lucky. It's like reading a bunch of Enid Blytons and then suddenly reading that one Dostoevsky book. That's it.
And then like, oh, this is what it takes to actually read a book. I mean, that's the best analogy that I can give.
And then you keep going from there. It doesn't even end there, because college is where you find yourself in the average or the median stage if you're lucky. When you get out, it gets worse. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And so you're constantly getting humiliated or getting put in your place, where eventually you grow up to a stage where you learn, oh, this is what my actual place in the world is.
The sinusoidal wave kind of gets like linear.
Yeah.
Once you hit that 30,
The curve
35.
gets flattened out.
It gets flattened out around 35.
Yeah, I'm not such a unique snowflake after all.
Where you're almost thinking like everybody else is unique.
Yeah.
And I'm the
loser here.
only idiot who's like the most common guy ever.
Yeah.
And that hits you really hard. But yeah, that is one of the reasons why it's not easy. That whole transition in itself makes you feel so it kind of in a way bogs down.
Yeah,
so if you don't handle it well, it can really break you.
Yeah, you feel inadequate and you don't know what to believe because you grew up believing something about yourself. Now you're constantly seeing indications from the world outside that your belief was wrong and it was built on a house of cards. Now everything comes crumbling down. What do you believe in now about yourself?
What do you latch on to?
Yeah, what can you believe? And that's really
So you start latching on to the past glory. Oh, like, remember how we used to chill till 4 o'clock, bro?
Oh, yeah.
And then you try to like relive that as much as possible.
And that reminds me of another point that we were talking about, which is as you keep growing up, maybe when you were a kid or you were so carefree, like you said.
Yeah.
So there's not much by way of, burden of the past. For you, everything is looking forward. My whole life, the world is ready for the taking.
Yeah.
So my whole life is ahead of me. But then you grow up and then...
No. My life was what it was.
Yeah. Now you have enough reason to look back now.
Yeah.
You've accumulated enough time that you have enough past to look back to. And as always, when you look back there's bound to be regret and there's bound to be all this stuff.
I mean, the first thing that changes is your vocabulary. The vocabulary change, and it's not a lot of vocabulary, but the general addressing of life becomes from my life can be to my life was, Like when you're a teenager, like my life can be of an actor or my life can be of the best so-and-so or I'll be in this, I'll be in that and all that. And then once you bypass that, then almost instantly, like my life was, you remember when we used to drink till 4 a.m. and then go to college? Remember life was, so that is one, that the lost time, the realization that you can't get back the lost time.
Yeah. And
that kind of haunts you. It almost like haunts you or kills you.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only do you have the burden of the past now, but the burden of the future has not gone anywhere.
Yeah, but it's still there.
Yep.
Right there.
So if you're done worrying about the past, hey,
there's chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Now you got to worry about the future.
While dealing with your present, obviously.
Yeah. And considering all the dreams and expectations you had from yourself, now you find yourself at a stage where you've been thoroughly humbled.
Yeah.
And you've been thoroughly grounded or...
basically, booted to the ground.
Pressed into the ground. Yeah. Like fine ground powder. And now you have to think...
it's like the Ghana quality cocoa powder.
Exactly. And now you have to think, as per my expectations or as per my goals, where I am right now, what do I need to do to get to that point in the future now?
Or
will I even get there?
Yeah, or it will be like, I'm never going to be that.
It's not.
You almost like surrender to
to
some kind of actuality that I'm never going to be there. I was a fool to think that I'll become that.
Yeah, and one of the most annoying things about that regret, Brute, is it's not always the big things that you regret.
Yeah, it's a small.
Annoying thing is
the finer things.
Like you could be randomly, cleaning up your home or you're trying to get to sleep or whatever.
Yeah.
It's that one conversation where you said the wrong thing or you embarrassed yourself or, this trivial...
you acted like a fool.
Yeah, you acted like a fool. Or a trivial thing like if someone says, hi, how are you? You say, I'm fine. And then you say, how are you? Then they say, I'm good. Oh, that's great. But how you doing? So, or an odd handshake or some cringy moments like that you have.
Yeah.
Those things are randomly just pop into your head.
And it has an unbelievable range. Like it can start off, like you said, with those very cringeworthy conversations that you had with a very important person. And it will go to, if you're a guy, it goes from, oh shit, now I feel that girl was into me.
Yeah.
And I kind of like screwed it up.
I should have done something.
About
then,
it. Things would have been better.
2,
if only I put my foot down and made that choice.
Yeah.
of career or a profession,
Exactly.
things would have been way much better. So it all becomes like maybe.
And what ifs.
Yeah. Ifs and buts and all that. And that kind of kills you. It kills you softly, steadily.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
As they
Yeah.
say.
It's like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Now, this is the mental aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Extending the mental aspect of it. The other tough part about growing is your mind starts writing checks that your body can't cash, which is another thing where, early on in your life, you feel that the body ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
My health ain't going anywhere.
Yep.
I can still down like a bottle of whiskey and function absolutely normally.
Yeah.
In fact, if there is other stuff that I can do, let me do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
2, saying that I better pack a Disprin, I better pack a painkiller,
Right.
and a, digestive syrup.
Yeah.
All that when I'm traveling, you never know what can go wrong.
Yeah.
So that is another transition which is very, very, very haunting.
Jarring. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's jarring. Jarring is like sliding in Telugu.
I just used another bad word. That's it.
But you know what I mean, right? What you realize is how delicate the body is. Because a simple niggle can like basically handicap you from doing so many normal things.
Yeah.
Like riding a bike or, sliding down in a sofa and like sitting in odd positions. All these things, all like you said, the finer day-to-day things.
Yeah.
When you start realizing that you can't perform you can't perform these day-to-day things, then again you go back, sit in the bogey in the past.
Yeah.
And like, oh, if only I
Take a trip
continued.
down memory lane.
Yeah. Continued working out.
Yeah.
If only I was continued playing that sport, probably my body would have been supporting me now.
Yeah.
Etc. etc. These are the things that growing up kind of unfortunately unravel for you.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why it's not easy to grow up.
And it's a funny thing because like you mentioned, right? It seems like mentally we are never able to catch up with our body.
Yeah.
In a time sense. Like when we are young, we are desperate to become an adult. So everyone around us keeps saying you're still a kid.
Yeah.
But you're like, nah, I'm big. I'm a big boy now.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can do that. And when you get older, now you're desperate to get back to a younger state.
And everybody's like,
no, you can't. You'll break your bones. Don't dance. Don't do this. Don't do that. And you're like, no, I feel young. I may be this old, but I still feel like a 22-year-old guy inside. So yeah, your body doesn't care.
But secretly you still know.
Yeah.
When you can't finish that burger in one go.
Yeah.
You secretly know that where did that stomach go which used to like digest stones.
Which was like a tank.
Yeah, which like you could never fill it up.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't know, like what's happening. And it all happens organically while you are seeing this.
Yeah.
That is another frustrating aspect. You know you don't want this to happen. You know that's not you.
Yeah.
But still the body has its own control.
Yeah.
And it just rejects so many things that you otherwise would want to do.
Yeah.
And that whole body and mind conflict starts coming in.
Yeah.
And it puts you in a very awkward position.
Yeah. And in some situations when you still push yourself thinking, no, I'm still young at heart, and you do it, your body is going to punish you big time.
Big time. Big time. The price that you pay.
Yeah.
It is. So guys, whoever are listening, this is a cliche and take it from your immediate seniors, like very immediate. Whoever is 22, 23.
Pretty close, like not
very,
far away.
Yeah, not at all far away. Like almost, you can just see us hands distance away.
Yeah.
This is the best time that you can actually take care of your body is when the body supports you, not when it doesn't support you. So whenever you can, I think it's important you kind of give its due respect.
Yep.
The last thing that I feel why it's not easy, and that I'll put a lid on this whole topic after this, is you remember how we said that the more you grow up, the baggage of the past starts coming in.
Yeah.
One of the things which is the most dangerous aspect of growing up is what we call as accountability.
Okay.
I'll just say how that accountability comes. When you are young, you start yapping your mouth off to whosoever and whatsoever. You are like, oh, you couldn't do this. And it happens with, with your parents or, with your neighbors or whosoever who are trying to have put in that good word for you or like kind of give you some direction and you're like, nah, you don't know jack shit.
Yeah.
And like, you see, when I grow up, I'll ensure. You kind of give those statements.
Yeah.
Like, I'll make sure.
Yeah. I know this all happened to you. but I'm different.
Yeah.
My life
I'm not
is
you.
different. I'm not you.
I'm not you. That idiotic thought of I'm not you.
Yeah.
You're exactly them. Like, you can't be more them
Yeah.
than anybody else, because it might be a different thing, but you will be in the same predicament as you'll realize that you need to go through that predicament of not having enough or not being enough. So what the other thing that keeps haunting you for yourself, you may not say it out, but because ThyGap, we are open about this stuff, is when you declare things as a young guy,
Yeah.
time will pass so fast that now you already are in a position where you need to now prove it.
You have to back it
Whatever.
up now.
You have to back it up with action.
Yeah.
And then slowly that whole concept of doing is so much more tougher than saying it starts creeping onto you.
Yep.
And that's another huge, I don't think I would even shy away from saying the stress aspect of it, the stress part of growing up, where your past dialogues or your past statements keep coming back to you and say that, remember you said that?
Yeah.
Yeah, every time you go meet your father or that one uncle who relatively did well and was trying to guide you or give you guidance, and you kind of yapped your mouth with him. Every time you try to meet him, now you are like backtracking and saying, okay, I said all that nonsense now.
Yeah.
He's going to ask me about, so I waited. Where are you at now? And then you're like, have nothing to
show for.
So that is another important thing. And I think this is something that we also covered in Measure of Men and in a lot of other topics about the thought, word, deed.
Yeah.
You see the importance of that as to, your value is not built on your capability or your pseudo ability, but it is actually built on what you deliver, what you make out of it.
Exactly.
And the more time passes, the more questions that are going to be raised, not by anybody else, even if it is raised by anybody else, those questions are all the more raised by yourself, which is when you start doubting that, was I even like that capable?
Right.
What made me say all this nonsense? Why did I put myself in this position?
Exactly.
So that's another annoying aspect about growing up, which doesn't make growing up very easy. And I don't know if you've observed, the more you grow up, time seems to contract.
Yeah.
Like years start passing faster than they used to pass before.
Yeah.
I don't know why that happens. Why that?
I think because we
comes.
are lesser and lesser in the present moment. That's the reason why. It feels like it goes by in a blur, because when we are kids and when we are genuinely curious and genuinely excited about life, and we have that outlook, we are more in the present moment, so we are living those moments more. But as we are growing up, we are getting tired of the repetitive bullshit.
Yeah.
So days are just flying by now, and we're not noticing much. It's only 2 years go down, 5 years go down, and you look back and realize, oh shit.
So much time passed. You feel that. That's another, that can be added into the list. Time contracts.
Yeah, you mentioned one danger area. It reminded me of another danger area where with growing up, right, what happens is sometimes people tend to have this self-imposed kind of mentality, or a self-fulfilled prophecy, self-limiting prophecy or whatever, which is once they grow up, and it could be the way our society is structured, the way we do things, it could be because of that. But once we grow up, once we start doing a job, and then if things don't work out, like we mentioned, right, there could be a point where you could receive a rude shock about what you're actually capable of. A lot of people tend to give up, at that point of time, because there is some sort of understanding or a sense that this is the end of learning, this is the end of evolution, this is the end of growth. You should have grown by now.
I can't be more.
You should have been a finished product by now.
Yeah.
If you're not a finished product by this age,
then you're done.
Condolences. Your life is basically
obituary
written off. This is your life now.
Yeah.
A lot of people tend to do a handshake with that sort of understanding, and that is a danger sign, I feel, because learning does not end, evolution does not end, none of that ends. You can still keep doing that, but if you kill the child inside, then that's pretty much one form of death.
Also, it branches out to another thing about growing up. The more you grow up, you start realizing that it's you.
Yeah.
It's not the world.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, you're like, oh, the world is fucked up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The more you start growing up,
the more excuses you run out of.
You run out of reasons or people to blame.
That's it.
Because you keep getting lonelier.
Eventually, all the arrows point in one direction.
Point in one direction. That's you.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect which doesn't make growing up easy because it's very lonely.
Yeah.
One, not for a bad reason, but it gets lonely.
It's
that's
just
how
the way it is.
The way it is.
Yeah.
The more lonely you get, the more onus is pushed on you to deliver or, whatever you have to do.
Yeah. Shout out to our previous episode, Loneliness versus Solitude.
Yes. It's
Which
very
has
important.
been picking up in popularity of late, actually. So,
Which is not a good sign. To be honest, we are a little worried about it. Don't get too excited about loneliness.
No, listen more.
But you get
I get the point.
I mean it happens, right? Like you start realizing that you're losing out on cushions to fall back on. There's a point where no matter how hard, how much it hurts, you can't just fall back. There's no fallback. It is you. You gotta take the blow on the chin. The more you take it, the better you get. And that kind of creates a lot of ambiguity into, should I go into a path which is a lot more safer? Your risk appetite reduces. Your appetite to failure kind of shouldn't reduce. Right? It should increase in a constructive way. I mean, if you're not dealing it well, then it decreases there too.
Yeah.
So that is another part which is not at all easy when you grow up. And you don't have to grow up a lot to realize that it almost happens by your 30 or early 30s.
Mid-30s,
Mid-30s. I don't know if you can call that midlife crisis, but this is something that's an extremely pivotal point when you start realizing that I've run out of reasons to blame. It's me. I have to do it. And it's all about my decisions, my choices, my way of doing things or whatever. That becomes a pebble in your
And if
shoe.
there's going to be a fuck up, it's going to be my fuck up.
Yeah,
now.
you have to own up for a fuck up. That's another scary thing.
Yeah, and to cap it off, I think one of the positive aspects of this growing up could be like if, it is looked at constructively, like you were saying, you have to build an appetite for failure because you will eventually be failing more because you're trying more, hopefully. But then hopefully yes.
Hopefully.
But one of the positive aspects could be eventually people who try some and then fail some, they see a pattern that, okay, there's just a lot of failures and there's some successes in between. So then the focus shifts from focusing too much on the outcome, because when we are young, that's what we focus on, right? The outcome, the glory, all that.
That I blame it on society because it's all about how much did you score in exams, what rank did you get in, which entrance, etc. So it's all outcome.
So that promise of return, that's all you focus on when you're younger. But as you get older, you see this pattern repeating itself. Then eventually, if you're approaching it in a healthy way, then you divorce yourself from the outcome a little bit. And then you start focusing on the process. And shout out to our episode, Process. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
Please check it out.
Please.
It goes more into detail into that. But then process, you eventually figure out that, okay, I just need to stick to the process. And I'm still not sure whether that's going to be a success or a failure. It could go either way.
You almost become it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it could go either way. So you prepare yourself a little bit for either eventuality. And then if you fail also, you kind of, again, if you're approaching it healthy, if you fail also, you kind of brush it off and you say, okay, I still have to go back to the process.
The other thing is, one of the things that happens when you grow up, and this is to not scare people from growing up. One of the great things that happens is you become so wise. You start understanding the definition of appetite of failure. It is not to just voluntarily fail, but the appetite of failure fundamentally means that, okay, if I fail, I brush it off and move on and restart the process. It's nothing to really worry about. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect about, the wisdom that you gain when you reach a certain phase, right, is you start understanding the beauty of the mundane. The beauty of redundancy. What was never exciting for you, you will start getting excited about that. You're like, oh, if I keep doing this, I will eventually become something. And this is the trick of the trade, that you need to be at it. You start loving consistency. You start liking a routine. You start liking a certain structure.
And all that is process, right?
All that is process. I'm just breaking it down. The fact that you start liking it, you can officially tell that you got your wisdom tooth. You can say that, yes, you're wiser about the bigger scheme of things. So you start understanding the finer aspects of it. That's another great thing about growing up, is your inclination shifts from capability, intelligence, and talent, blah blah blah, to experience, wisdom,
application,
discipline.
all that stuff.
Which is exactly what you would be running away from when you were a kid. So the tables kind of turn.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like take it as an Easter egg. That one day that you feel like, I wish I just like woke up at so and so time every morning. Wish I had my breakfast. You are going in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know, that's when you can officially kind of look at yourself in the mirror and say like, okay, good things are going to happen now.
And the other positive wisdom brings is it takes you away a little bit from the black and white, and you get to look at the gray more.
Yeah. You see the shades of...
You appreciate nuance more.
Right.
The other downside of wisdom is you just get a little bit boring. That's it.
But when you are at that stage, everybody else around you is boring.
Yeah.
So it sadly doesn't matter.
Might as well.
That's when you just continue listening to the ThyGap podcast, because that is the only source of excitement once you grow up. So as you can see, because of all these reasons, Bogus, growing up, it's not easy.
It is not easy.